Has Elliot Anderson forced his way not only to the World Cup squad, but the starting 11? England's midfield has been under the spotlight for years and lacking the balance to beat the best teams in the world. But Anderson's performances against Andorra and Serbia suggest that he could be the wildcard player that changes everything. I'll be breaking down what makes Anderson such a unique midfielder, how Nuno and Nottingham Forest found Anderson's best position, and how Anderson could finally be the player that solves England's midfield problem. So let's start by looking at what makes Anderson's profile so unique. Now we have to remember that Elliot Anderson is still only 22 years old and only played his first full season in the Premier League with Nuno and Nottingham Forest last season. And probably the best thing about Anderson and what makes him so useful for England in the World Cup squad is that he's both a creator and a destroyer. And his profile as a midfielder is so interesting. He plays in that number 6 role in a double pivot at Nottingham Forest, but he played as a single pivot against Serbia for England. But I like to categorize him as a pass and move footballer. He's not the Jorginho type, that deep line playmaker that sits deep and tries to spray passes around, keep the tempo moving. He likes to pass and get involved, making supporting runs in the attacking play. And this move against Brentford shows everything that's good about Elliot Anderson when he's on the ball. He has the ball in front of Brentford's deep block, and you can see Morgan Gibbs-White just peeling off into the space that's vacated in the back line, and Elliot Anderson finds him with a lovely pass in between the lines. But like I said, he's a pass and move footballer. He likes to support play, and in this case, as soon as he makes that pass, he also spots that space in between that Brentford back line, and as he plays that ball into Gibbs-White, he makes a lovely forward run into that space. But as soon as that ball's played out wide, Gibbs-White makes that lovely movement into that space as well. And this is what I mean about intelligent movement from Elliot Anderson. Instead of making that same movement into that space that's vacated, he just holds his position, knowing that Gibbs-White is going to take away the nearest opposition player. The ball from Ndoye into Elliot Anderson is lovely, played into his feet, but it's what Elliot Anderson does after that. Back heel flick into Gibbs-White. Gibbs-White plays a lovely pass back into Anderson as he rotates round and shifts his balance to face forward towards the goal, and then a lovely strike with his right foot that is well blocked by the defender. But this is the passer move that I'm talking about. He doesn't just sit deep and play passes into the attacking players and then do that for 90 minutes. He likes to get involved with play. His role does change a little bit when playing in that single pivot for England against Serbia, but against the big teams, when they're playing that double pivot, then this type of movement off the ball will be so useful for England. And he's so positive when on the ball. He's forward thinking, plays that ball into the attackers early and trusts them to handle the ball under pressure. And he has a technical ability and a variety of passing techniques to be able to cut open that low block. Here he is for the England under-21s against Slovenia in the Euro tournament this summer. And he spots the run of Harvey Elliott in that left wing position and then plays a lovely driven pass with the laces, just beautifully weighted, flat, pacey, and then Harvey Elliott just tries an outrageous lob first time and it hits the post. But it's not just against deep blocks that he's effective. Here he is in transition, carrying that ball forward. Powerful runner on the ball, but it's that choice of technique again. Doesn't use his weaker left foot, uses the outside of his right boot to just curve that ball into Harvey Elliott's path. Beautifully weighted pass under severe amounts of pressure from the opposition midfielder. Harvey Elliott strikes it into that top right hand corner, but against that variety of technique. And this next pass against Brentford is even better. Now Brentford are trying to play out from the back, but it's a loose pass by the centre back. But it's the speed of which Elliot Anderson spots what's about to happen that's so impressive here. As that ball is loose, he's approaching the ball in a 50-50 duel. Chris Wood, fair play to him, he also spots what could happen here, but you still need the vision, the execution of technique for this to come off. And as Elliot Anderson spots him making that run, in a loose ball situation, he still has the awareness to play this ball with the instep. Beautifully low driven pass, flat along the ground, curved into Chris Wood's path. And it's just Chris Wood doing the rest, rounding the keeper and slotting it in. But he's not just a passer. He loves to make deep runs off the ball. You can't just pigeonhole him into a deep position. You got to let him roam and find different areas of the pitch to hurt the opposition. And in this case, it's a simple throw-in against Southampton for Nottingham Forest, played into Gibbs-White, and he just makes a dart to support the play. Lovely first time pass around the corner from Gibbs-White. But that first touch is so explosive. Away from that pressure, just takes it into the space, drives with the ball, and then there's that ball striking ability. It's not just his passing where he's able to strike the ball well. Beautiful laces, driven low and hard into that bottom left-hand corner. One thing I think he needs to improve a little bit, especially if he's going to play in that single pivot like he did against Serbia, is that ability to play with his back to goal under huge pressure. So far we've seen him against deep blocks, but it's this situation here against Serbia that just needs a bit of refinement, that bit of awareness to play under pressure. And in this situation, it's Mark Gay that has the ball. Elliot Anderson is calling for the ball in that single pivot role, but as he receives it, he's fully head down. Doesn't really check his shoulders or scan to see what's happening around him. He only knows about the player putting on pressure behind his own back. But what's happening is the left winger spots what's about to happen and reads that Elliot Anderson just isn't scanning the pitch well here. And as he's making that pass out to Konza, he plays it blind. And this is the little subtle details he needs to work on with his back to goal. I think he's a player that loves to see what's happening in front of him rather than that back to goal play. And I think if he's got a deep block in front of him and he's just threading passes through to the attacking players and getting ahead of them to support play, he is such a good player in that pivot role, especially in a double pivot. But in the single pivot role, he just needs to refine his game a little bit when he's under huge amounts of pressure. But like I said at the start, he's a creator and a destroyer, and his ability to get around the pitch, his physicality, so mobile, and then the time and the tackle once he gets there is so impressive. Now this is the situation that won the game for Nottingham Forest against Aston Villa in their home game, and as Matty Cash is about to receive the ball, Elliot Anderson is already moving towards him, and then the way he snaps into him is so good to see. Very old school, aggressive, but always wins the ball so cleanly. And he escapes with the ball, drives towards the goal, and still has that composure after. He doesn't just play that simple pass after, he drives into the box and finds a beautiful cutback into Anthony Elanga's path, who tucks it home. And this is what I mean about that ability to create and destroy at the same time. And in the game against West Ham this season, Ward-Prowse plays the ball into Paqueta's feet, who's dropped from that number 10 role, but Elliot Anderson loves to get up to players, loves to put that pressure on, so mobile from that deep number 6 position. And this is what happens when you don't check your shoulders against Elliot Anderson. Snaps into the tackle again, just wins the ball so cleanly off Lucas Paqueta, drives with the ball, but it's that ability to retain the ball, make the right decision. As he moves forward with that ball, the pressure comes in from behind him, from Fernandes, who makes a little sliding tackle, but it's that ability to manipulate the ball under pressure. Just rolls it from his right to his left foot, moves it away from the slide tackle, retains the ball, and plays it out wide. And what I love about him is he loves to compete. He doesn't care about the size of the player that he's coming up against, and he's so good in aerial duel situations, which is surprising because he's not the tallest midfielder. And in this case against West Ham, long ball from the keeper, and he's up against Souček, known for that aerial ability to get up and win his aerial duels, but in this case, it's an equal battle between both of them. Elliot Anderson backtracking, Souček with a little ground to make up, but has that forward momentum, but it's that ability to leap, get to the same height as Souček, and then control the header at the same time whilst under pressure, guiding it down to Gibbs White. And his data radar is so interesting to see. Look at that right hand side, the technical elements of the game, the progressive passes, progressive carries, successful take-ons, his ability to drive with the ball, carry the ball forward, and play a decisive pass is there to see. But he loves the defensive side of the game just as much. Look at the tackles and interceptions in the 84th percentile, the percentage of aerials won, which I just mentioned earlier in that competition with Souček. You know, his ability to win the ball and then progress it forward is so interesting to see. And among all Premier League players to feature 900 minutes in a 24-25 season, only 4 players one possession more often per 90 than Elliot Anderson. But I think there's areas that he can improve in his game. If you look at the data radar again, he's in the 23rd percentile for pass completion. And that comes mostly from his long aerial passes. He can execute them, but those passes over long distances can be a bit inconsistent. When he's playing those short, sharp passes in between the lines and keeping play moving with the tempo of the game, then he's good. But if you saw that back to goal sort of play that I showed you earlier, that blind pass that got intercepted. These are the kind of things that he just needs to improve to really take himself to the next level. And to look at what he could be in the future, we have to look back at his development as a player. Starting off at Newcastle, nicknamed the Geordie Maradona, you can see that he was talented from a technical perspective, even had that ability to play in a number 10 and that left wing position. He went out on loan at Bristol Rovers, and I think they loved him up there. But when he got back to Newcastle, his pathway was blocked. And for Nuno to see what he did and drop him into that double pivot role was genius. Being that mobile player that can support attacks but also contribute on the defensive side of the game. And it's all those abilities combined that have put the big clubs on alert and have made him the standout player for that number 6 position alongside Declan Rice. Now it looks like Thomas Tuchel is going to go with the 4-2-3-1 system that can shift and move about into a 4-3-3 with a single pivot. And it looks like this might be the team that starts that first game in the World Cup, with the likes of Lewis Skelly at left back. I'll come on to why in a second, but it's that midfield trio. The thing that needs solving before the tournament, needs game time between the players to get used to the rhythm and tempo and different options that they can create for each other on the pitch. But it's likely to be Rice and Bellingham as guaranteed starters. That might be up for debate given Morgan Rogers' performance last night. But this is the kind of system that I think we'll go for. And it's Bellingham moving into that central area. Rice doesn't like to stay around here. I don't think that's where he's best. He's moving. Thomas Tuchel's moving Rice higher up the pitch and allowing him to get involved with play. And then leaves that one player that you need to stitch everything together from back to front. And the other player that can compete for Anderson with that starting position is Adam Wharton. He isn't fit at the moment, but he's the only player at the moment that's looking like a standout. Like you've seen before, anyone can make a late run to that World Cup squad and even that starting 11. But Anderson right now is staking his claim. That ability to play the ball into these players here, into the players and keep the tempo moving, keep the play moving. And I think one of the reasons why Lewis Skelly is good in this role is he has that extra layer of security. Reece James is going to be allowed to bomb forward, but also tuck into these areas. And then you got the pace of Mark Gay, Konsa, and that defensive reading of the game to just stop those counterattacks as and when. But I think the key thing is what happens against the big teams, the ones that come out and press England, the ones that come out and can attack England when in transition, versus the teams that play in a deep to low block. The ones where you're going to have to camp out in the opposition area. And it's this situation here that happened in that Serbia game. That ability, it was Tino Livramento at left back, but that ability of Kane to drop in, Anderson to be that single pivot and just dictating things from deep, that was so interesting. And I think Adam Wharton can actually do this role as well. I don't think it's clear cut that Anderson just grabbed that and it's now his for the rest of the season up until the World Cup starting game. I think Wharton can play his way into this position. And I think Anderson, with what he did at the England under-21 Euros, winning that natural progression. You know, Thomas Tuchel already said, what I saw from the England under-21s is what forced me to try Anderson in that single pivot role against Serbia and Andorra. And it worked. And I think this is the kind of system that gets the best out of every attacking player, but it all hinges on that one player that connects the ball from back to front, that stops the opposition counterattacks, and the legs you need. That's something that Anderson probably beats Wharton in. The legs you need to get into these wide areas and stop counterattacks. Get into these wide areas and stop counterattacks. That's something that comes to Anderson quite naturally, and his ability to win the ball, intercept the ball so cleanly will be so useful in these games. But I think, like I said, it will come down to the type of opposition that England play against. I want to see him with his back to goal, building out from the back against the likes of France, Spain, and see how he does. And the ability to stop counterattacks as well against those teams. Now, if you like this video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. What did you make of Elliot Anderson's performances? Is he a nailed-on starter for England in that first World Cup game? Leave your comments down below, and I'll see you on the next episode of A Game of Two Halves.